This is the Italian Real Estate Podcast, here to help you with the ins and outs and basics of Italian real estate, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Italian Real Estate Podcast, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Of course, we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you for asking. And today, in this episode, we wanted to talk about some of the wonderful things that a person may be able to take advantage of if they decide to make the purchase. But Marco, let's just quickly talk about the first thing on our list here, and that's the close proximity for traveling to other European countries. And as somebody from Italy, could you maybe share some of your experience of traveling around Europe and having Europe literally at your front doorstep?
So I will start by saying that all of the major European cities are very well connected to Italy, especially by train. So, of course, not only by train, but also the airplane is a very good choice if you have to travel in other European countries or major cities in Europe. But I have to say the high-speed trains that I've seen that leave from Italy and go basically anywhere in the EU are very well functioning. So you could go easily by train from Italy, from Rome, from Milan, from a number of major cities in Italy to Paris in France, or to Berlin or Madrid. So really the fact that Italy and the whole European Union have a very good train system does really help to move from one city to the other in the European Union.
It's a really wonderful thing to be able to have, and especially when you consider some of the low-cost flights that you can catch all around Europe. I know you're a fan of trains. I am a fan of planes, and to be able to have some of the really ridiculously priced flights that you can sometimes still find after the past couple of years, the prices have gone up a little bit, but even then, like, it's gone up, say, from maybe 15 euros to 50 euros or 30 euros, or it depends on where you're trying to fly to and from. But I mean, you can find between destinations, say from Italy to Eastern Europe, or Italy to the Iberian Peninsula, or Italy to Northern Europe. And if you plan it well enough in advance, that you could probably get round trip for 20 euros or a single one way for 10 euros. And then if you're spending already anywhere from, say, 100 euros onwards or 150 onwards, it's already like, oh, I don't know about that. It's already a little bit up there in price. But another aspect that I think is wonderful about Italy and what it can offer for somebody who's buying a property there, that's also on our list, is also about the not only low cost of airfare, but the low cost of what you're able to purchase in Italy, like the property itself and what you get for your money in Italy in comparison to some other places in the world.
Especially compared to America, prices in Italy for properties are, I'd say, extremely low if you compare them to the US, for example, but they're lower than other countries in the European Union as well. Like I'm thinking about the UK. So Italy and probably Southern Europe has properties that are really nice, and the price is surprisingly low, especially for a known Italian. So I'd say that you're going to see definitely prices that are much lower than you would see in your home country if you're an American or a Canadian or even a UK citizen.
Yeah, if depending on where you're coming from in the world, I mean, even if you're coming from, I would say even places like Hong Kong, maybe even Singapore, I have some friends from that part of the world that have started looking at real estate in Europe and especially Italy, and it's like they're looking at the prices for the amount of space that you get and in the locations that you get. They're just like, I could buy 10 of these for the price that I might be able to at home. But not necessarily that would be everybody that has that ability. But to quickly move on to this next point in the list here is also not just about the low cost of property in Italy, but the low cost of the property taxes that you have to take into account that would come up on an annual basis. And so what would some of those be that a person might be able to take into consideration?
So when you buy a property in Italy, there are some annual taxes that you will have to pay, but you'll find that if you're buying a non-luxury property, those are relatively low. Of course, they depend on how big the property is, the region in which the property is located, but compared to many other countries, property taxes, annual taxes in Italy are very, very low.
Yeah, it's great to see that the accessibility is there in multiple regards. So are there different regions in Italy that offer special advantages when it comes to property taxes, or is it pretty similar across the board?
You can expect a similar amount across the board, even if the annual taxes are determined by the local authorities. So they are in fact different, but they're not that different across the country.
Well, thank you for answering that, Marco. And just to keep on moving forward with this list that we have, and that would be along the lines of the affordable cost of living in comparison to many other parts of the world. Would you be able to maybe talk a little bit about that, like kind of what, say, some people might be able to expect in different parts of the country? Because, of course, north to south, the cost of living may differ. But, I mean, generally speaking, what are people looking at when they're talking about Italy?
We've talked about the cost of life in other episodes, and of course, the cost of life in Italy is much lower than the cost of life in other countries, especially the countries where our audience tends to be from, so US, Canada, even the UK. So people who move to Italy to enjoy their property will find that the cost of life is much lower than it is in their country. Also, salaries tend to be lower for Italians than they are for Americans or Canadians or UK citizens. And you will also find that there's a significant difference between the north of Italy, central Italy, and the south of Italy, where the cost of life is even lower in southern Italy. And you will also find that only certain areas have a cost of life that is higher than the whole country. Like I'm thinking about Milan or Rome. Even if there, the cost of life is significantly lower than it would be in the US. And just to give a few examples, going out to dinner in Italy will probably cost on average 35 euros per person in a normal restaurant. Of course, you could spend 50 60 euros per person in a more fancy restaurant, or even more. Of course, there are areas where you can spend a significantly higher amount of money, but the average is 35 euros per person, or even like 50, 60 euros per person in a more, say, fancy restaurant. If you want to go out and eat fish at, say, 50 euros per person is a very good price in Italy, where you will get very good food, which is, of course, significantly lower than the price for the same dinner in the US. But also, I'm thinking about plans for your cell phone in Italy. They are as low as 10, 20, 30 euros per month when you get unlimited internet, unlimited phone calls, and it's just a fraction of what it would cost in the US, where plans are much higher, especially if you want everything unlimited.
And even when it comes to cell phones, I know there are some limited plans that are, I don't know if the price has changed since I last looked, but I had a plan that I paid for at one point where it was like 5 euros, 6 euros per month for a really crazy amount of data. I mean, maybe it was 100 gigabytes plus unlimited minutes and unlimited SMS. It was absolutely absurd. I'm sure there's probably something still going on, and maybe even 7 euros a month. But even for the cost of eating out, I know when it comes to dinner, that those prices that you were mentioning, yeah, like 30 to 50 for like high-end restaurants. And also I've been to plenty of places where, I mean, even if you think about in the South, the cost of eating out there for a dinner can even be lower than that. So it really is amazing that you have this wide range of prices that are all, however wide it is, are still much lower than what you might find in other parts of the world. It's really great to see. And so another aspect, though, of being able to purchase property in Italy, or not being able to purchase property, but being able to enjoy it in regards to being able to purchase property in Italy. Most people will not need a visa. Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail about some of what is involved with that and why that is the way that it is?
So basically, if you are a citizen of one of the countries that does not require Italian citizens to be a resident in that country in order to be able to purchase a property in that country, it also means that thanks to the reciprocity principle, you are not required to be a resident in Italy in order to purchase a property in Italy. So you could purchase a property in Italy, a second home, even if you are vacationing in Italy, or even if you are not physically present in Italy in that moment, you could hire a lawyer like ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com, and we can purchase a property in your name on your behalf based on a power of attorney. So you don't have to be a resident of Italy in order to be able to purchase a property in Italy. So you don't need a visa. And you also do not need a visa if you want to go to Italy on vacation, at least if you are a citizen of those countries that are part of the visa waiver program, like the US or Canada. So you can have your property in Italy and visit without the need to do anything. You just get on a plane with your passport and travel to Italy, and you can be in Italy for as long as 90 days at a time. And so if you are a citizen of one of the countries that is part of the visa waiver program, you could just fly straight into Italy without really doing anything else.
It's wonderful to be able to have that ability. But just the last thing on our list here that I think is worthwhile jumping into is that it's not necessary to have the visa to be able to enjoy your purchase that you've made. But what if you want to be able to get a visa? How will that help you or not help you when you are trying to go through that process?
So yes, one of also the advantages of owning a property in Italy is that might facilitate the obtainment of certain visas. And there are actually visas where the requirement is specifically having a property at the time in which you submit the application for the visa. I'm thinking, for example, of the elective residency visa, where one of the requirements is to either own a property in Italy or rent one. And so only if you are a homeowner in Italy or if you rented a property in Italy, you can apply and obtain the elective residency visa.
That's great to be able to have multiple ways to be able to call Italy home or to be able to enjoy your property. But one thing is when you're going through the process of purchasing, most, if not all of your clients, I know, come from different parts of the world outside of Italy. But when you're going through the process of purchasing, a lot of people may have concerns about where they're sending their money, how they're sending their money, and this and that, and is the property good? So could you maybe tell us about this one last advantage here about the secure purchasing process that Italy offers?
Of course, when purchasing a property in another country, people have legitimate concerns. Like, is it a safe process? Should I be worried? How is it the process in Italy? They have no idea how it works. And I think what's important here is that the process in Italy, the purchase process in Italy, is a very secure process. There is a number of steps that need to be taken in order to purchase a property in Italy, and there are public officials that come into play and that necessarily have to be present during the purchase process that make the process even safer. I'm thinking, for example, of the notary, which is a public official in Italy that needs to certify the transaction and that will only certify the transaction if certain conditions are met. So the risks that maybe you will find in other countries are not present in Italy. And one of the reasons why they're not is that because there is this public official that will certify the whole transaction and that will not proceed with the certification if the transaction is not perfectly done in compliance with Italian law.
Well, Marco, thank you so much for going through all of these topics and helping us to understand some of the advantages of buying property in Italy. And of course, if anybody is interested in going through that process, how can they get in contact with you and your team for the help along the way?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com, or give us a call. Our numbers on the website.
Absolutely fantastic. It's great that you and your team are there to help facilitate this process and help people go from all over the world to be able to call Italy home, or at least have a vacation home in Italy. And of course, if you're interested in more content about Italian real estate, whether that's buying, renting, or relocating to Italy, or where to go in Italy, be sure that you're subscribed to this podcast on YouTube as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed on YouTube, that means you're also automatically subscribed to the Italian Real Estate Podcast presented by ItalianRealEstatelawyers.com. Of course, also, if you're interested in more about life abroad, living abroad as a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, or you can search for Not Your Average Globetrotter on YouTube, Google, or your favorite podcasting player of choice. Of course, Mr. Marco Permunian from ItalianRealEstatelawyers.com, thank you so much for making yourself available for this episode of the Italian Real Estate Podcast. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.